This is the Inclusion Conversation. I'm your host, Grace Young Foster, founder and CEO of the Inclusion Initiative. I'm an adoptee, I'm a foster care alum, and I'm passionate about elevating our communities. It's time we're included and visible in the conversations about work, careers, and just life. Let's be visible and let's be loud. Join me now. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Inclusion Conversation podcast. I'm your host, Grace Young Foster. We're so thrilled that you are with us today. And if you are listening on Apple and Spotify, please make sure that you give us a follow and rate our show after the interview is over. So today we have a pretty incredible guest with us. She is a dear friend of mine, and we have known each other now for a year and a half. And she happened to find the Inclusion Initiative and became a part of our community very early on, and has just been such a tremendous support system, a mentor, and an inspiration to me as I've been building the Inclusion Initiative. And it's my great honor to welcome you, Anne Harper. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Grace. I always love our conversations, so I'm sure this will be no different. I'm super excited to be here and to support what you're building there.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thrilled when you agreed to be a guest on the show because you are one busy lady. And so we're very honored to have you. And before we dive into our conversation, just want to share with our audience a little bit about you. So Anne Harper is a co-founder of Unlock, a future of work personal CRM designed to put control and opportunities back in the hands of leaders, resulting in genuine connections, better decisions, and a greater sense of agency. Love that word, agency, so critical. Prior to Unlock, she spent 20 years as a talent and ops executive, working in-house in consulting to companies like Sony Pictures, AECOM, DreamWorks, and Crooked Media, right?
Yes.
As well as the executives and founders fueling them. Personally, she's a New Jersey transplant in search of great pizza in SoCal, a lifelong learner, an adoptee, an immigrant, and a concert junkie ever since seeing Prince at Madison Square Garden. Yes, she loves to build courage by facing her fears, including a solo South Africa safari, skydiving from 14,000 feet, oh my goodness, and singing in front of 10,000 people. And of course, swimming with sharks, which is an everyday just swim with sharks. So that's fascinating. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about those personal feats. But to open our conversation, Anne, would love to hear from your perspective, your experience in journeying through your life as an adoptee.
Yes. Well, I will start by saying it's such a pleasure to be able to share my personal history and story with you because it's in direct contrast to the way that I grew up. And I think many of us grew up, which is to say, we didn't necessarily have permission or a sense of agency around owning our story, or more importantly, owning who we shared that story with. And so when you're a transracial adoptee in a family that's very visually conspicuous, it invites a lot of interest and curiosity. And so I grew up with people asking me intrusive, insensitive, and sometimes just downright rude questions, as I'm sure we all have. Everything from, does that mean you were found in a garbage can, to does that mean your parents can't have children? All of these things, like literally from virtual strangers. So I will just say, I spent decades feeling like I owed strangers this, canned speech of my story. So I'm not going to give you that version today. I'm just going to tell you that I'm Anne. I'm the oldest of 5 adopted children. I have a Korean brother who's not my biological sibling, and my 3 youngest brothers are biological siblings of each other, and they're Puerto Rican. And my parents were a very young, progressive white couple in the suburbs of New Jersey. So I was raised there, but like so many adoptees, I just want to remind listeners that my life and my story did not start there. It started in Seoul, South Korea, where I was found as a baby, either orphaned or abandoned. They weren't sure because I was walking on my own. And I was placed into a private foster home. Like many of us, my name was made up. My birth date was approximated. And I lived in a foster family for about a year and a half there in Korea before I flew across the world to start my life in America.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the experiences growing up that shaped you, right? Because you're the co-founder of Unlock. You've had a pretty expansive, impressive career in corporate America. You're a business leader, you're a thought leader, you're involved, in the adoptee space and also in the Asian American space. Like, it's just you've
Yeah.
had so many life experiences that have brought you to this point. So what are some key moments growing up that paved the way for you?
Yes. Okay. So going back to the liberal parents that raised me, I will say that from a very early age, I was raised with the belief that people can change the world with, a little bit of individual effort. So I remember feeding the homeless at our church's soup kitchen and sitting on my dad's shoulders when we were picketing on behalf of farm workers' rights. Um, so so it really planted a seed that change is possible if good people stand up and want to help rewrite history. So I took that philosophy and married that to this idea that being as conspicuous and multiracial as we were, I was never going to blend in or be a wallflower. I was always going to be noticeable. And I just decided early on, or as early as I can recall, that if I was going to stick out, I wanted to do so for all of the right reasons. And, I will say that's an interesting, kind of fork in the road for many adoptees or foster alums, which is some people have a strong reaction and it turns them into people pleasers because they are trying to stay 2 steps ahead of this fear of abandonment. Other people, not that it's this simple, of course, but other people will go to the other end of the pendulum, which is to push people away, reject you before you can reject me, prove that I'm unlovable, and rather than get my hopes up and try to attach myself to anyone. I was the former, the classic oldest child, first of all,
Mhm.
only daughter. So very responsible, very type A, classic overachiever. I mean, all of these things that really ended up serving me well and were the foundation for how I showed up in the world, not just at work. So I was the person, for example, when I got a job as a cashier at the grocery store, I wanted to be faster than the computer to calculate the change. I wanted to have the fastest scanning items per minute. I always was. And it wasn't a relentless, anxious pursuit. It was just kind of, I always assumed it was just part of my identity and, my makeup. But yeah, I always just wanted to strive at least to be the best version of myself. And that meant doing the things that scare me, the things that are uncomfortable. And then in the process of doing that, helping other people along the way. So whether that was helping to pick earlier career people up and be a mentor or give advice, some unsolicited, I'm sure, or whether it was in a job. I worked for the state of California. I was the person who, once I came up with a process or an approach that I thought was like really efficient, I would say, does anybody else want to do this, use this format or this template? It just didn't seem like I should keep anything I found really effective to myself. So I was always thinking about how I could make things better for my having been there. And so I think some of that really laid the foundation for the way that I decided to raise my hand and say yes whenever opportunities presented themselves. But some of those key things along the way, I certainly had, maybe on a more personal note, I had that external story. That was the part that was high functioning, high achieving. But there was, I won't call it a shadow side, but there was a lot more than what was visible on the surface. And in my family growing up, appearances and keeping up appearances was very, so that was, I would say, a dysfunctional skill that I gained, but I really did learn how to show up with a smiling face, like positive attitude, leading the pack, even if things are stressful or really dysfunctional or chaotic at home. And I think for a lot of us, there is kind of that duality or that code switching that goes on.
Definitely. Lots of code switching that we learn just through the signals that we're getting at home and then externally, but then also the stories we're telling ourselves about what we need to do in order to be accepted. And for me, like, how do I stay in this family? Because I've been given up multiple times. For
Yeah.
you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure there were some similar feelings there too. And so what did you feel like you had to hide at home versus what you had to hide on to the outside world?
It was at home, I wasn't really allowed to be angry or to, because so many people were counting on me. I will just tell you honestly, I often felt like the third parent. I didn't know that at the time, but I was just hyper responsible. And my parents have joked that if I hadn't been such an easy first child, they might not have gone on to end up with 5, but it made it very easy by comparison because I was there helping get my brothers to and from school and all that stuff. But, I would say my parents have actually very polar opposite externally, like energy and external dispositions, right? So my mom is like very fiery and outspoken and the center of attention, very charismatic and gregarious. And my dad is very charismatic and gregarious too, but in a very quiet, soft-spoken way. He won't say a lot, but when he does, it's really a zinger or a gem, right? And so I grew up somewhere in the midst of that, being like a third, parent figure. And that to me meant I wasn't allowed to get my feelings hurt. I had to put whatever had to get done ahead of my own feelings. And I'll give you an example. I went through a period of time that was pretty difficult, and it involved, one of my adoptive brothers. And only later did we discover that my 3 youngest brothers had been abused in their foster home prior to being adopted by us. They were already 4, 5, and 6 when they were adopted. So because of that abuse, there was some acting out that wasn't necessarily age appropriate. And I was like the target of that acting out. And so it meant that I had to wear a key and lock my room every time I left. It meant that I had to constantly feel vigilant about my personal safety and or like privacy and just my, dignity around like privacy. And I wasn't allowed to be frustrated about that. Or when I was like the nth time that I caught my brother hiding in the closet, or he would make holes in the wall to try to spy on me. He would hide in a cabinet. He would climb out on a second-story window and like move the blinds this much so he could have a way to peek in. When I complained about that or, felt rightfully indignant, he's in my closet again or whatever. This didn't happen every time, but I think this is why messaging and like the things that imprint on us are so important. I just remember very clearly my mom saying, "Really, Leanne, can't we just have one night without any drama?" And so that was one of the things that I learned. I'm just going to have to stuff this. And just feel unsafe in my home. And it wasn't even until I left home to go to college that I even realized how much that influenced my personal space and my sense of wellness, because I was so at ease being in the dorms off at college. And then when I went back home to visit the first time sleeping in that room again, I started having a panic attack and I was paralyzed. So I just didn't even realize until I was removed from that. I think it's what a lot of us learn, unfortunately. It's like you learn to keep moving the bar lower and lower for like what's acceptable. And so you don't realize that it's reached toxic levels at times.
Yeah. And so then how did that impact you as, you talked a little bit about college and how that started to manifest itself into just panic, feelings of panic. And you're realizing, right, that those experiences at home were starting to impact your life now that you left and were on your own. So how did that also then transition to your professional life?
Yeah, I actually, college for me, just touching on it really quickly, was like actually just a total time of freedom and exploration. I had no money. I was broke, bouncing a check to like get groceries, but I was free to really redefine myself and to really have that independence and not have to be responsible for anyone but myself. I really learned to explore and discover what I was interested in. And that's what led me. So I ended up traveling through many majors, but I started off as a psychobiology major and I ended up in sociology, because what I realized was these seeds had been planted when I was younger, where I was really fascinated by power dynamics, access to resources, privilege, identity, how these things factor, socioeconomics, all of that. And so it kind of erupted when I was in school. And so I studied sociology. When I left school, and by left school, I mean dropped out of school, because my parents couldn't support me anymore. And I had the not genius idea to drop out and work and save some money and go back to college, because that's really easy to do. So needless to say, I didn't go back right away. I started working, and I had been working since I was 11, babysitting for 4 brothers, but also I started babysitting for money. Got my first job as soon as I was able to. And I've always had that resourcefulness and that initiative. I've always taken the initiative to like go out, even when I didn't need money. I've had 2 or 3 jobs. But what I would say, it taught me to raise my hand and say, I'll do it. The thing that other people are maybe like, don't make eye contact with me because I'm already really busy. I was one of 5 managers, for example, at Sony Pictures. And when everybody was looking for a way to get out of taking on more work, I was the one to say, I'm happy to try to crack that code. Partly because I love solving problems. I love innovating. And also I believe that universe is like trying to invite you into experiences and adventures if you open yourself up to it. So I believe in saying yes. And that has really served me well, whether it was that raising my hand and taking the initiative is what led to me getting promoted over the 4 other managers who had been there much longer than I had, because I really didn't mind hard work, and I didn't mind, as we all know, being really resourceful, learning how to read other people, knowing how to read a room and understand social dynamics really served me well in the workplace. The resourcefulness was like, this is way back before the internet existed. I had to figure out how to solve problems myself. So I started learning software programs, all DIY, and literally like reading a manual on how to do these things. And again, that overachieving or really wanting to be exceptional drive came out. And so I just really was never mediocre, but I did really have to learn to speak up and use my voice, because some of the messages, it's one of those interesting dichotomies or tensions, because there was the part of me that wanted to speak up for change, advocate for other people, but it was often difficult for me to speak up for myself. But that was something I really had to learn to channel. And honestly, I practiced. I persisted in every work setting I ever had. And that always led to bigger opportunities, more visibility, and promotions and rewards. And I often say that I'm lucky that I took this path, the overachieving path, because you can rein that in. I had lots of therapy to realize some of that was dysfunctional, where I felt I had to always achieve and succeed. But it's easier to take the foot off the gas than it is to try to get to 60 when you've been like pushing everything away and, being really anti-establishment. So I'm fortunate. It has really served me well.
Yeah, that really resonates. I think the raising our hand to take on more to prove our value and our worth and that we belong there.
Mhm.
And we quote unquote never really belong, right? Like
So
intrinsically, we have that feeling of never belonging anywhere. So we push and push and push to try and really prove that we do. But underneath it all, right? Like we never had to prove that we belonged. We belong because we're human beings. But I feel for me as an adoptee and someone that was a foster too, just that was never messaged to me. I never heard that. All I ever heard was, "You're here because we decided you're here. You're here because we quote unquote chose you," things like that,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, so that really resonates, I think, with so many in our community, just this constant pushing and drive to do more, pick up more, be more, like you said, never mediocre,
Exhausting.
always the
Yeah.
best because of that messaging.
Yeah, and not only is it exhausting and not really sustainable because you feel like you can never get off the treadmill. I did have an aha moment in therapy, last year when my therapist said something about, well, of course they love you because you're you, and period. And I was like, I'm me who did something nice for them, or who's thoughtful and gives nice gifts, or who helped them through this challenge or something. But it never honestly had ever sunk in for me that I also intrinsically had value just for being there. Um, and it's still a concept that, like, even though I've achieved so much externally, that inner knowing was really not even on my radar. It didn't
Yeah.
even feel like something I should feel entitled to. And I will say, because when you're an adoptee or a foster care alum, as you said, you're constantly bombarded with the messages externally and internally that that you should be grateful, that you shouldn't cause too much trouble, that things could be so much worse for you. And it's taken really a lifetime to get to that point where I just don't think I've ever truly known what unconditional love was like. And you happen to know because, we're friends, but I'm estranged from my parents right now. And one of the things my mom said when we were having this fissure is, I said, kids do so many things. And by the way, I'm a grown woman already when this happened. But kids do so many things, and their parents they could commit murder. I've watched true crime all the time. They could commit murder and their mom will hide them in the backyard and lie to the police. So like, parental love is supposed to be unconditional, but I just don't feel that. And my mom said, I guess my love's not unconditional then. And I think
Oof.
I had felt that subtly. That was why I couldn't own all of my feelings. That's why I couldn't always speak up. And not just my mom, like, I attracted that in bosses and in relationships too. So I think the message kept trying to get through to me. And it really wasn't until recently that that became a full sentence. You're valuable because you're you, period.
Wow. Yeah. It's very heavy, but also very insightful. Like how many people get to hear, right, their parent or parents admit, like, my love actually is conditional. That's, oof, that's harsh. But it's also kind of freeing in a way, right? Because it's the truth. She was honest with you. I mean, it's not good. The honesty is good.
It took a lot of unpacking, but you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. I don't joke, but for dramatic purposes, I'll say, like, I died 6 years ago for an adoptee, for a foster care alum who is trying to prove that you're lovable and not abandonable or forgettable or negligible or
Mhm.
too much. That's the kiss of death, right? And so when my parents disowned me and said that I was dead to them, I was devastated. I literally thought everything in my life up until that point had, on some level, always been in reaction to, or influenced by, or anticipating, what does my family need? What do my parents need? How do I say this the right way so it'll be received the way I want it to be? Just hyper vigilant and hyper aware. And so when that rift happened, it was devastating, and it was the greatest gift I ever had, because that was when I really picked myself up and resuscitated myself and thought, now I get to reinvent myself truly as myself. And I will tell you honestly, in therapy, I spent time just learning how to know what my feelings even are, because I spent so much time pushing them down. I knew about the externally facing, like how to show up. I know about social masks, but actually learning the difference between these subtle nuances, right? My starting entry point was just, I don't like that. And then I would be able to dig a little bit deeper past that with my therapist to, like, honestly identify, what do these things even mean? Where is it coming from?
Yeah.
And all roads lead back to that original wound, and all the subsequent ones.
Yeah. The
It is heavy.
death
Oh
by
my
a
God.
thousand cuts. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's literally a death by a thousand cuts. But then you were kind of reborn in a way too.
Mhm.
And that part's beautiful.
That's also why I'm telling you this today, because I've spent so much of my life owning all of the successes and the shiny, exterior. And I'm just at a stage in my life when I want to hold everything up to the light and have a 360 view, live in 3 dimensions. So it isn't, my life on the daily is not heavy like this, because identity is made up of so many different facets. And
Yeah.
sometimes I am very aware that something is related to my adoption or abandonment. Other times it's because I'm a woman. Sometimes it's because I'm Asian. Um, Sometimes it's because of where I live or how much money I have or what I look like. So it is nice to be able to remember all of the great stuff means that much more to me, because I've had to go through that harder, darker times. But now I'm owning those darker times too, and it's not like my own secret shame to hold on to anymore. It's
No,
just
and you
another
get
part
to
of me.
walk through the world as a whole person,
Yes,
be
exactly.
seen as a whole person. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that part's wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing your story and just the pathway and the experiences that have gotten you here. And speaking of your journey, and now you're just building a company that's amazing, and I love the name Unlock.
Thank you.
And would love to hear a little bit more about what the company envisions, the mission. What led you to build it, and what's the future of Unlock?
Yes, so it goes back to that original thing. I always get a little bit angsty, to be honest, if I'm someplace for too long. And I think it's because in my personal life, I do crave quiet and stability and, equilibrium. But professionally, I just want to be challenged. I want to, like, know that I'm growing and learning, doing new things, innovating, disrupting, whatever I can. That's what makes me feel alive. And so I knew somewhere after 20 years under my belt, right, in corporate America and consulting, I just knew that I wasn't going to go back to being someone's employee. I'm basically unemployable at this point. um, But I had amassed a lot of really valuable skills, things that I didn't
Yeah.
even realize how impactful they could be to other people until I heard repeatedly what my gifts were or how I helped people discover and nurture their talents. And having worked in-house leading talent acquisition and DEI, I saw firsthand how access is controlled and there's just a lot of gatekeeping and how the tables are really not like stacked in your favor. And so Unlock is a technology platform that brings together all the real value of your relationships. It kind of takes a contrary approach to social platforms. If you think of social platforms, we have this illusion of connection because we've got thousands of connections and contacts, but where's the real value in that? It almost becomes nothing. It's so much that it
Yeah.
becomes meaningless. So we thought, what if we could bring the most valuable 50 closest connections, those that you want to really nurture and cultivate, and we help you keep it on your radar. We help remind you, like, I want to have quarterly lunch with one of my college professors, or I go to a conference and I meet 10 interesting new people, and 2 of them I want to make sure I follow up with. It puts all of that in the palm of your hand. So it's really like a personal CRM for executives and rising leaders. To fully activate their relationships, because people have this negative connotation when it comes to like networking. And
Right.
really, if you drop the label and all the baggage that it brings with it, it's really just about human connection and building relationships. And this platform helps you do that. And it helps you continue to elevate yourself, whether that's through learning or understanding how to vet opportunities and having that insider's perspective that we can offer. So that's what we're bringing to the world, leveraging the really incredible, deep, rich relationships we have, and now bringing it to a platform where it democratizes it. And it allows not just executives with very deep pockets to benefit from what we know, but this is much more accessible. And, so that's what we're hoping to really shift the tables so that you feel like you have agency and clarity and a community to support you as you're building, much like you're doing, Grace, with the Inclusion Initiative, right? Putting tools and information and power back into people's hands.
Yeah. And connecting, like real, authentic, meaningful connections. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, literally.
Love
Mhm.
that. Love that. So seeing yourself as co-founder, and you're leading, I believe, with 2 other co-founders,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
your journey from the babysitting money and all the part-time work to now being this. Like, I know when I kind of step outside of myself and just look at my starting point, which has similar parallels to yours, to like this now and who I am, even just right looking at my face and looking at just how much I've grown and evolved over the years, it really makes me just take a deep breath and be like, gosh, if only I could have told 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old Grace, like this is a future that you have to look forward to. You are going to be so much more than what people allow you to believe that you are in this moment. And it would have changed my life. And not
I-
that I don't appreciate the life I have now, but back then, if I could have seen or heard even a smidgen, a piece of this,
Mhm.
it would have been so powerful for me. So I'm just curious, obviously I want you to say what's on your mind too, but also curious what you would have told your younger self.
I I actually work on doing this today because I am also my younger self. All the insecurities and the fears and the stuff that is stuck in the past, it's still in here, and I'm still making peace with her and letting her know, really parenting myself in the way that feels unconditional and supportive and makes the world less scary. So, what I say to myself is, all of these things, all of these experiences will serve you eventually, and you will make the world a better place for it. But it will come at some cost, but you'll have an incredible life and a wonderful legacy as a result of it.
Oh, Makes me very get a little weepy inside. Like, can you imagine just like, and that's something that I think about. I have one kid, and it's just she's very young, and I think about being able to say things like that to her as she gets older. It's just, yeah, it seems so simple, like saying words of affirmation and encouragement, but it has a lifelong impact. And you're right, right? Our opportunity now to reparent ourselves and to heal because of being able to appreciate how far we've come. Like that's really a gift. And I
That
really appreciate you saying that.
And I would also say I don't have biological children. I'm auntie to dozens of kids who are no longer kids. They're like full on adults themselves. But putting that back out into the world, like knowing how much an encouraging word or feeling seen and validated, that's part of the reason that I share some of the, gloomier parts of my story, because I don't want people to just see the success or the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and think, well, she's got all these things going for her, I could never get there. Because there are plenty of things that were not working in my favor that I was able to persist or, circumvent and to get here. So I think that's a gift we can give to each other. That's exactly why communities like this are so valuable, because the earlier you hear it and the more often you hear it, I think you should really just surround yourself with people that see your inherent value and beauty inside and out. And just keep doing the things for others and for yourself that are so impactful.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Leanne. Thank you. I want to transition now to the last segment of our show. I did not send you these questions ahead of time because just answer whatever pops in your head.
Bring it on. Yep.
So these are fun, rapid fire questions. It just helps our audience get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. Maybe swimming with sharks will come up. I want to hear more about that. But all right, so let's get into it, Leanne. You ready?
Okay. Bring it on.
Favorite food?
Pizza.
You're like the third guest that said that. Wow.
I mean, it was literally in my bio.
There's something about it. Yeah, it's just such a real comfort
pizza
food.
is good pizza. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with this one.
It wouldn't be my death row meal, just for the record. But I'd go for something much more decadent and indulgent. Anyway, why do I have that morbid humor?
I love it. I'm here for it. All right. What is your superpower as an adoptee?
Helping other people identify and discover their talents and nurture them.
Lovely. Wonderful. I love that. What did you dream of doing when you were a kid?
I will say this was a way my parents really encouraged me. I thought I was going to be the first woman president of the United States. And they didn't discourage me, despite the fact that you cannot actually be the president of the United States when you're born in another country. But I really thought I was going to, I think many of us who grow up with this type of history, I thought I was going to be in service. I wanted to be an attorney, working on behalf of children's, rights and advocacy. And that was the second president. Yeah.
Wow. No, I love that. They helped you dream bigger, which is really beautiful. What is one thing on your bucket list?
Sure. Let's bring up sharks now. So just for the record, I grew up and I still remain terrified of sharks. And that is why I say, I'm building my courage muscles, because it terrifies me, but I want to do it anyway. So I've done 2 different shark dives. First was a cage dive. Then I did a free swim dive with sharks. And now my bucket list version, it's actually not too far away, I'm planning it, hopefully, is is a great white shark dive, but I'm smart enough. I'm not like an adrenaline junkie. I will be in a cage for that, but I would love to see them up close. Yeah.
Wow. And I hope that you like have like a videographer or like a photographer. I want to see that.
That
That is,
will definitely
I want to
be,
see it like on the screen though. I will not be doing that anytime soon or ever.
yes. Well, and you know what? But I love it because it's just thinking back to professionally, like when you do something that terrifies you like that, how can you be afraid of like getting up and giving a speech, or how can you be afraid of giving someone constructive feedback? By comparison, it's just like so tiny. So
Yeah, that's one perspective. I'm still not going to do it. Leanne.
you've got
All
your
right.
own version of swimming
All
with
right.
sharks.
That's right. That's right.
I think it's hosting a podcast.
Yes, yes, yes. So, final question. What is a piece of advice that you want to share with our audience?
I think it's what really served me well, which is say yes. Say yes and figure it out later. Say yes, yes to yourself, even in circumstances that might seem really difficult. When I'm going through hardships, I say yes to myself and say, yes, you're supposed to learn something from this or grow or be better from this experience. And what is that? So, but just in terms of opportunity, in terms of living a limitless life, say yes and don't wait for it to come to you. Go out and find what you can say yes enthusiastically to. The world
That is
is your
very
oyster.
insightful. Yes, the world's your oyster. So insightful. Leanne, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. And I'm so glad that you followed your own advice and you said yes to be a guest for us. So thank you. And you said yes and founded your company, Unlock. So check out Unlock at ourunlock.com. You can get in touch with Leanne on LinkedIn and on their website, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning into this episode. And we will see you next time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, share, and follow us. Check out our show notes to know where to find us on social. And our website is theinclusioninitiative.com. If you're an adoptee of color or a foster care alum and you want to join our professional community, it's free, by the way, hit me up via DM or you can find our email in the show notes. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.